Welcome. I'm Felicity Ezewike. Glad you could join us. Today's conversation has been carefully curated by New Central's research team lead and the producers of One Slot. Now, it is often said that when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. But when the elephants are the US and China, the entire savannah shakes. Africa may be thousands of miles from the battleground, but the fallout from their tariff war is sending tremors through Nigerian exports, trade agreements, and economic policy. A 14% tariff on Nigerian goods has stirred a diplomatic scramble as leaders grapple with shaky investor confidence, rising Eurobond yields, and a fragile Naira. As African Continental Free Trade Area slowly builds momentum and the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, teeters on the edge, the question is no longer whether Africa is affected, but how prepared we are to push back, pivot, or perish. We'll be exploring the implications of these tariffs with our guests, whom we'll introduce after this short break. Do stay with us. Tunde Oladubgague, former Secretary General, Association of Nigerian Community in China, joins us for this conversation, as well as Abraham Great, who is a business and global investment strategist. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on today's conversation. I'll just get right on to it. Abraham, I'll start with you. How badly does the 14% tariff hurt Nigeria's $10 billion trade with the U.S.?
Every bad thing is a good thing. Every problem, has a latent solution in them. And every country with personal autonomy has the right to impose whatever they want to impose. It is created an opportunity. Every threat creates an opportunity for growth, for solution. So it is high time for Nigeria to then introspect and see what they could do with those tariffs. And also, this is also an opportunity to strengthen bilateral relationship. The fact that the tariff is being imposed does not mean they are written on stones. This is now a time for the Nigerian government, is a time for the foreign ministry, and also the time for diplomacy between the two presidents to begin to negotiate, on behalf of the private sector. As you know, Nigeria is hugely driven by the SME, and it is the SME that will suffer any kind of tariff, imposed on Nigeria. So it is high time for, our foreign ministry to engage with their American counterparts.
Okay. Tunde, could this shake investor confidence? Or already, Abraham is alluding to that with the need for further collaboration. But could this shake investor confidence and push bond yields up? Could this tariff war shake investor confidence and push bond yields up?
Oh, definitely. It's going to affect investors' confidence in the sense that you see, every year investors they already have their plans, and I'm sure none of them who have been looking forward to something that is going to change their movement or how they operate, on a yearly basis. People plan what they are supposed to do ahead of time. So when tariffs come all of a sudden out of nowhere, it's the investors' confidence, and it's going to make them to rethink. Like, okay, maybe we need to look elsewhere, but for this kind of tariff, there is always a time for everything. And I think this is the time for Nigeria to reposition herself in the global market. It is the time for Nigerian leaders to wake up and be like, okay, let's look at what we can do, within the West African, among the West African countries. Let's look at the opportunities that we have ahead of us. In that way, people will begin to look at us differently so that Nigeria can take advantage of what is the problems that is facing facing the world now. You know, there is so much happening across the world. But this is to our own advantage. We need to figure out a way to harness the vulnerabilities that is in the world right now with regards to the trade conflict. Thank you.
All right. There are talks. We know that Nigeria is already facing a 14% increase, rate. And this move disrupts the AGOA, that's the African Growth and Opportunity Act, which is set to expire in September 2025. And we know that it has been a long-standing pillar for economic cooperation between the U.S. and African nations. Will this tariff indeed kill the spirit of AGOA? And do you see an extension of AGOA come September 2025? Abraham, the question is for you, please.
It is to Africa, particularly the Association of African organization, to come together and enlarge by the economy of scale and have a bargaining pride. If you recall Porter's 5 forces, the bargaining power of buyer. A lot of African products at the moment, particularly mineral resources and many other things, go to the American market at the moment. And when America at the moment is being braggadocious, Africa needs to now come together and realize that we need to have an open border that enlarges the economy of scale. The market needs to enlarge because Africa and African countries need their bargaining right. I'm postulating from Porter's 5 forces theory, but it's also literal. Look at China, for example. China is able to brag and be in this war with America for one reason. American middle class is larger than the entire American market. So China's middle class, the middle class in China alone is larger than the entire market of America. What that means is that anything that China is producing, China can consume, its own middle class. So they can call the bluff of America off. So the same thing needs to happen. Nigeria being about 200 million people, we already have a very major bargaining right. But imagine if Nigeria with ECOWAS, Nigeria with East Africa, Nigeria with Central Africa, Nigeria as a bloc, I think it's AfCFTA that is called the Acceleration of African Continent Free Trade. If they can all come together and see themselves as a singular market without barrier, like what we have in the EU, it becomes a bigger market that is bigger than America. Then we will partner with China as our trade partner, as our manufacturing partner, as our human resources development partner. In that case, America will come back on the table and they realize that they're playing with an emerging market.
All right, I think I'll stay with you for a bit and just ask you to expand your thoughts on, you've repeatedly talked about Nigeria. In fact, both of you have said reposition Nigeria. What do we do to expand the market? Are you referencing perhaps the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement?
Yeah, I'm referencing the definition of African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I think the greatest I would say that the greatest evil that happened to Africa, pre or into the colonial era, is the eradication of our excellent mindset. Before colonization, Africa traded with the rest of the world. As a matter of fact, African goods traveled to the rest of the world with ease. There was no border in Africa. And the greatest disservice that has happened to the humanity in Africa is these borders that we have put on ourselves. Now, it's easy for me to go from here to any other country or in Europe to travel freely. But in Africa, we have chained ourselves with borders. Yet, that is a very huge market that we need to open up. It will break up the supremacy of the West because we will have a larger middle class. But for that to work, if I could also mention two things. For that to actually work, Africa needs to go back to Maslow's hierarchy of need. We need to, all African country need to realize that the focus for the next 10 years should be on providing its citizens the basic amenities. According to Maslow hierarchy of need, that is the physiological need, the air we breathe, electricity. Until we solve this problem, we cannot compete with the rest of the world. Because when we have this problem solved, shelter, air, electricity, then the next thing will happen on its own. It will just happen on its own, which is the next level of Maslow hierarchy of need, and that is safety. You realize that security will improve wherever there is the life of human being, physiological needs are being met. That is why we run to the West. That's why we go to America. That's why we go to the UK. Not necessarily because life is a lot better than that, but because you are physiologically better in this environment. The moment we solve this problem, our bargaining right will also improve, our trade agreement with any kind of country, because they will not be looking at us as the downtrodden.
All right, Tunde, I'll come back to you and put the same question. How should Nigeria be reacting to this to maybe not just save face, but gain some benefits?
I would say, we can react in so many different ways. And, what is actually happening now, I call it a game of collectivism, where the big players, they're ganging themselves, they're putting themselves together. And Nigeria, as the biggest country in Africa, the richest country in Africa, the best place for economic growth in Africa, Nigeria should come up together with the rest of the African countries and lead them. We need to come up with new policies where we speak the same economic language, we speak the same intelligence language. We create new frameworks, for economic development. We come up with new policies, new stuff, within the continent of Africa, where all of the African countries, all of the member states will know they will have like a roadmap to a roadmap to African development as a continent, and we want to look at Africa as just one continent or as just one place where all of us will be playing the same game. Like in China now, they have different provinces, but all of them, they do internal trade. Most of the things, sometimes we look at China as maybe exporting things to the US or exporting things to Europe. But the fact is that 75% of what China produces, they are consumed locally. So we can do the same thing. Nigeria should work with other African countries, work with West Africa, the ECOWAS, the Central African countries. All of them should come together and begin to trade, to do business together instead of looking forward to across the sea. We can do things in Africa. We can improve the lives of people, as a Pan-Africanist. I'll call on the Nigerian policymakers to look at that. We open our borders and we make trade easy for us, looking at how people move from one place to the other, like a free movement within the continent, using the same intelligence language, the same policy, just like what the other African leaders, like what Muammar Gaddafi wanted to do for Africa, or the likes of Kwame Nkrumah. We need to look at all of these past leaders that they have done very well, and look at the things that they have done that will be useful for Africa. So we need to bring our African brothers, both small and medium and big ones, together to come together and do our own thing within the continent of Africa. That way, we will not be depending on one country or the other that is about 9,000, 10,000 miles away. We just do our own things within our own continent and build Africa. We have everything that we needed to survive, When you look at what is happening in the continent right now, it's just so, it makes me feel not so good, because our ancestors, those who fought for the land, they knew that there are a lot of things on that continent, and they fought and they kept they kept the land for us. But look at what is happening to Africa right now.
I guess that's why, Tunde, sorry to interject.
The price of gold is being determined by the United Kingdom.
Okay, I have to interject though. I mean, sorry about it, but that is why we're having this conversation, because we need Africa to move forward and not be stagnant. Tunde, Abraham, let me come back to you and explore your submission. If I get you right, you're saying that Africa, Nigeria should lean more towards China and leave the USA. Is that your position? If yes, then I have a question specifically on that. Abraham, please.
Is that question for me?
Abraham, the question is for you, Abraham.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. But if we are students of history, we realize that no nation develop in isolation or develop alone. There are always the benchmark or trade partners, or like when you look at the Roman Revolution, for example, and it spread to the rest of Europe. Right now, China has the economic prowess, capacity. As a matter of fact, China is experiencing overcapacity. And what do I mean by overcapacity? China has spent the last 30 years in human capital development, in ensuring that there is limited elections, limited shenanigans in the country, raise the value, that is the value system of the country, and then use that value system to promote education. And those education have been largely into science and technology and innovation. So what you have in many sectors, China is producing more than it can consume in some sectors. So with that overcapacity, I'm so grateful because this was actually explained to me better when Chief Oba Ade-Peters was the Secretary General. He had lived in China for almost 17 or 16 years before moving to the US. So, and we studied the environment, we traveled, we traded with them. We realized that the government of China then empowered the Chinese citizens and companies to say, look, we have overcapacity. You go and invest in another country, we will pay you. Just to be able to put less pressure on what is being produced in China. So Nigeria can take advantage of the overcapacity. That is why I'm in China. That's why Chief Oba Ade-Peters is in China. That is why we're bringing different ministers into China. That is why we're traveling often into China, and we're trading with several companies. Because there are many things that Nigeria needs that China has in surplus. And rather than us just entering into container and just bringing goods and putting pressure on our currency, what we can do is to take advantage of the overcapacity of China and in manufacturing and create industrial revolution in Nigeria. Partner with China. And to do this, for this to happen easily, our government must wake up to remove bottlenecks. We have this Ease of Doing Business Act. I think you did mention that. We have the Startup Act, and we have a very working immigration policy. We still have electricity problem. So for all of what we're looking at in terms of how we can make the best of our relationship with China, with Taiwan, with Vietnam,
okay,
we need to improve on electricity.
Okay.
We need to improve our immigration policy. We need to make Nigeria an easy place.
All right, Abraham, yeah.
Can you imagine what it would be?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of work to be done. And you sound like China might have the magic wand that we're looking for. But there are some persons who are a bit skeptical. While the U.S. is busy doing the tariff thing, China is making inroads in Africa. We know that they have the Belt and Road Initiative. We also know that they have been here. They are in over 40 African countries. Now, according to the Chinese Loan to Africa database, China has financed over 1,000 projects on the continent since 2000. But what does this mean for Africa? A lot of persons say debt and also dependency. There's a lot of benefits, of course, in having bilateral relations, having new ideas and investment. But what about the debt profile that keeps piling for Africa? I can't remember the country now, but they're sort of handed over their national asset to China to manage for 99 years. So how do you balance this beautiful thing that China is promising and the consequences for the individual countries, Nigeria in this case? Abraham, I'm staying with you.
I'd like to make a bold statement that fear no debt. America owes trillions of dollars, and it's not going to kill them. Debt is not going to kill any country. But debt is bad because it creates a burden on the nation. And I think the country you are referring to could be Zambia. Zambia wanted to develop and brought in China so much that almost everything. But this is where you have great leadership with great intellectual prowess that can. If you look at when Nigeria began to trade with China to bring in China manufacturers to build roads in Nigeria, the kind of arrangements that were done before Fashola came to the scene were different. Many states were getting into no problem with China. But when Fashola came, and then you see Ambode, and then you see someone who go and study how Lagos State deals with China, you realize that Nigeria will never be subservient to China. Now, China itself, with what is going on with America,
sorry, I need to interject again.
Particularly under Trump. The reason is that
I need to interject, Abraham, before you
accrued to China through the U.S. trade was what China was using in many ways to loan other countries. Now that is, there's a problem with that. African countries should not look up to China for loan. I don't think it's going to be as easy as before, which is a blessing in disguise.
All right, Abraham, I need to interject so that I don't forget my thoughts. I wanted to speak on something that you...
I'm a proponent of the president that we have now, who has a good financial team to be able to see how to reduce debt and how to find alternative means to development, not just depending on loans.
Okay, I was trying to interject to say, you said Nigeria can never be indebted to China. Is that based on an accurate information, or you're just being optimistic based on future projections?
Optimism is part of projection. Pessimism is also part of projection. But when you juxtapose antecedents of leadership, what I'm saying here, I did not say that Nigeria cannot be indebted to. I said Nigeria cannot be subservient. That was my word. Nigeria can never. As a matter of fact, we know the Chinese environment, the Chief Oladubgague's in-law. We know them so well that if you put one Nigerian brain together, to get that Nigerian brain, you probably need 11 Chinese. As wonderful as China has accomplished, we have lived among them. I do business with them in millions of dollars. I can tell you, for you to arrive at one Nigeria, you need about 11 Chinese. So the brain at work in Nigerian leadership, particularly, you're talking about the people that are managing the affairs of Nigeria right now, Wale Edu, Yemi Cardoso, the president of Nigeria, I fear no evil. I fear no issue of debt. Because, for example, many people focus on debt, but they do not realize that interest in debt is one of the greatest problems of debt. So right now, the credit rating for Nigeria has improved, which means Nigeria can easily take a loan at a much lower rate, interest rate, than we had before, servicing debt with debt. Now we are improving, and a lot of finances can be freed up for mega projects in Nigeria. And not everything should be done with debt or with loans. A lot of things can be concession. Look at what the president is doing right now, concessioning a lot of manufacturing, road construction, concessioning them to to private sectors. The same thing is happening with several organizations like China. Come in, build this road, come in, bring this development. We're not going to even give you sovereign guarantee. But what we can assure you, there is a huge return on investment in Nigeria. Come and see it with your eyes. Come and invest in here. You will recoup your money. You don't always have to loan money. One of the reasons why people, governors, and people in government always look for money is because of our wacky procurement, the Procurement Act. Because that allows for a lot of corruption. Most of the money that are loaned are embezzled. So let's move out of loan and find other creative ways to develop our nation.
All right.
We still take loans, but not as much.
All right, let's bring in Tunde in now. Just circle back a bit and ask, yes, the conversation is partly about Nigeria, but it's also about Africa generally. That's why I'm going to ask, can small African countries handle this tariff shock, or is it a debt trap waiting to explode? We know for a fact that there are countries who cannot.
I think, I will still go back to what I said before. You see, the tariff will probably have a little impact on some African countries, but I don't think it's going to affect us as a country, because right now, the Chinese,
Okay, I think we're having a bit...
But the number of Chinese that came to the investment, the number of Chinese that came to the hall shows that China is looking forward to doing business with Africa. So we had maybe about 400 seat capacity hall, but we had almost ×2 of the number of Chinese that were outside waiting to kind of get hold of us in the conference. That gives me an idea of how desperate the Chinese are looking forward into doing more business with Africa. So for Nigeria as a country, I do not think this tariff will have a negative impact on us. It's just a challenge for us to brace up and to think deeper and to look to better ways to do things, so we don't do the things we used to do to control our resources. Like, for example, what the Minister of Mining is doing is great for the country. You see, this is the first time that the mining industry is having like a robust database where foreign investors can actually go online and look into what we have in the country. So if other ministers would do that to showcase what we have in the country, a lot of people, the Chinese, the Russians, are looking forward to doing business with us. So it's not going to have a very serious impact. Rather, it's to our advantage. A lot of the Chinese manufacturers now, in the conference that we just had today, they were asking a lot of questions relating to the incentives that we have, and we explained to them that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is giving the investors a lot of incentives in terms of tax break and also in terms of a partnership. Most of them are very, very excited. And from the conference that we were having, we had about 2 state governments that have shown interest.
I'm sorry to interject. I'm not quite sure what conference you're referencing, but let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue with the conversation. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're still discussing Africa, how it is affected by the U.S.-China tariff war. I still have my guests with me. Thank you, gentlemen, for being patient with us. I understand there was a China-Nigeria summit today in China. Could you talk to us about it, Abraham?
Yeah, we have just concluded the China-Nigeria Investment Summit in Guangzhou, and that has been a major success. I think we had over 300 investors in attendance, are willing to do business with Nigeria. I'll let Mr. Oladubgague talk more about this.
All right, over to you, sir.
Yeah, so
I guess that was the conference you were referencing to. Sorry,
I'm gonna come to that again. Okay. I'm gonna break it down. We talked about mining. We let investors understand that Nigeria is the best place for investment, and Nigeria is the only place in the world right now where investors will have over 100% return on investment. So we talked to the Chinese on mining. A lot of them were very happy with what the minister is doing with regards to, a lot of everything is everything has become electronics. They can see what is happening. They can see what we've got in Nigeria. So from there, we talk about technology, biotechnology. And in the area of biotechnology, we explain to them that Nigeria is now moving towards harnessing biomass, and that we are looking for partnership that will work with us with regards to converting our biomass to biogas on an industrial scale. Then from biogas, we go to biochar. So that biochar, we are looking at working with Niger State because we want to work with Niger State and Ondo State. The reason for Ondo State is because Ondo State has the largest deposit of bamboo, which we are thinking of those bamboo into biochar. So the biochar, by the time we break this biochar down a little bit, when the biochar becomes activated, it makes our agricultural product to become not just.
All right, Tunde, sorry to interject, but the conversation is time pressed. Sorry, please. I'd like you to give us in bullet points some of the gains that investors should expect to get from the partnership that was talked about at the summit. If you can make it in bullet points, please.
Now, if you want,
the investors
I could share with.
Go ahead, Pastor Greg. Sorry about
that. No, please go ahead. I'm going to need your technical team to give me access to share the screen, and then I'll be able to.
Okay. Unfortunately, we cannot do that. Ibrahim, please. This is one slot. We cannot have a screen for you. I just wanted you to just give us the highlights of what people who are interested in becoming partners would gain from. I mean, what are some of the key partnerships that they should look forward to from this summit, please?
The first thing that it will gain is the similarity with the Chinese market, which is a huge youth population. Nigeria has a huge human resources potential. The reason why America went to China is because labor is in China, and that labor is cheap. Right now, even China can move jobs to Nigeria. America can move jobs to Nigeria. Both countries can move a lot of manufacturing into Nigeria because Nigeria has over 70% youth population that speaks good English, speaks global language, and that is a recipe for global growth. The next thing is that Nigeria has 35. Now listen to this: between 36% to 500% ROI. So FDIs are coming to Nigeria because they're beginning to realize this. Go and ask MTN, go and ask Econet, go and ask all ShopRite and all these national companies. What is Chevron and all of them? Why are they still in Nigeria after decades? Because Nigerians probably the only place, and I say this boldly, because we have looked at the situation with Brazil as an emerging market, Argentina, they could not sustain. Nigeria has consistently sustained 36 to 500% return on investment. Nigeria is a money ritual for any foreign direct investor.
All right, let's move on and go to something you said when we started this conversation. You said it's time for Africa to take bold steps. I'm just paraphrasing something you said. I'm going to stay with you, Abraham, and just ask for you to speak on Africa has talked a lot about self-reliance. Is it finally time to act with this U.S.-China tariff war?
I want you to rephrase that question. I'm not sure if I got it.
Yeah, I'm asking. I said, okay, Tunde seem to get it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it is time for us to act. You know, we need to put our acts together in order to have economic growth. We also need to work together as a continent to create more jobs, you know, and to work with our foreign partners, foreign investors like the Asians, so that we can have an increased foreign direct investment. And apart from having conferences or wooing them or bringing them into the country, we also need to work, you know, in line with the President Bola Tinubu enabling environment, so that we implement, you know, we implement what is designed, you know, how he wants this to be done. We implement it. It has to start from the embassies that we have overseas, our ambassadors and the consul officers. They need to make it easy for investors to secure visa. We also need to make sure that we protect them when they get into the country. And we also need to reduce the kind of negative news that is being broadcasted across the country all the time. We need to make adjustments to that.
Okay.
So all of this, by the time we put all of this together, and we check it every time.
The job of the media is to...
It will help us, it will help the country.
All right, now just to balance that a bit, the media does not deliberately propagate bad news. It is what is news that is reported. So I think it's more of attitudinal change. Things need to change government-wise, security-wise. If things change, of course, the media will play along and report what is right. We cannot be reporting what is not obtained on the ground. But that's just to speak on that.
If you allow me to say, if you allow me to add to that, media, I want you to study how China built the country we have today.
Gentlemen, one person at a time, please. Since Tunde was speaking, could you just use 30 seconds and then we'll come to you, Abraham, please.
Okay.
Yeah. Tunde, just
what I mean by all these things happening with the media, you know, there are stuff on social media. I mean social media, you know.
Okay.
There's a lot of negative stuff that pops up all the time. And all of these things, they are politically motivated, you know.
Okay.
So we need to look at our laws, you know, against the freedom of information. You know, should there really be freedom of information?
Wow, you know, I think we should just pause there. Tunde, I think we should just pause there, because that is a very complex conversation to be having now. We cannot in any way advocate for a curtailing of the freedom of expression, because if we do, I don't know what kind of message we will be sending simply because we want to look a certain way. Abraham, if you could just speak to that in 30 seconds. I think we have one more question and then we'll wrap things up.
I was going to refer to a book I have here, which is a book of how this great leader, Lee Kuan Yew, developed Singapore.
Okay, you could just mention it without showing. You can mention it without showing it, sir.
Now, please allow me to make this. Unless the media realize that negativity destroys the country, and countries like Qatar, like the UAE, have built an environment intentionally creating law Not just to stop people from speaking, but the more you project negativity, wake up every morning on the stock exchange. Speculation affects your currency. It affects your country. Nigeria has to get, I don't know how we're going to do it. Nigeria needs to get to a point where we realize the volatility of what we say, how Nigerians express themselves is affecting our currency, is affecting the energy. Things don't change because leaders do right. Things change because we all change our mindset. Things change from our life, from the day we are born, what we say, the way we behave. And Nigerians need to behave better. We need to do better, and gradually we see things change.
I mean, that is the whole point of having conversations like this, to move the needle in the quest for better democracy, better life for everyone, one of us involved in Africa, in Nigeria, and across the globe. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for sparing the time to speak with us today on this very important subject. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for time as well. Thank you for having us.
And that's our program today. Thank you for watching. We're back again next week with more engaging conversations. Do stay with News Central for more programming.